Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye fans, to Punting is Winning, the All Iowa podcast. We are your hosts, Keith and JD, here for the second week of 2025. We are actually 1 week into our first complete year of podcasting. So thanks for being loyal listeners for us this long. If you've been around since the beginning, obviously we haven't been on YouTube that long, but we did start our podcast out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you want to go back and give those a listen, see how far we've come along in the last year.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's been a year, but it absolutely, by calendar, it has. It just seems like it went by so fast.
Yeah, it sure did. But there's always something to talk about when it comes to Hawkeye sports.
Yeah, always.
So, well, speaking of such, let's do some clean up from last week. Let's talk about the question of the week from last week, which was, I think, mistakenly interpreted as what player scored the most points against Iowa. I think a couple of people responded that way. We were actually looking for the team that scored the most points against Iowa on the heels of giving up 116 to Wisconsin last week. We did have a couple people pipe in, and I think they said 118. I don't know if anybody got the right answer correct, but the correct answer was February 3rd, 1988 at Michigan. Iowa was defeated by Michigan 120 to 103. Just looking back through that year, that was a very, very high-scoring Iowa team. Several times scored over 100 points, and I think 3 times over 120 points on the year, including having a very lopsided win over number 1 Kansas in the beginning of the year. So very interesting year to go back and look at. It was also the same year that they lost to Indiana 116 to 89. So they either really blew them out, or they tended to get blown out by some teams too. So still very fun teams to watch. I remember those teams, the BJ Armstrong, Roy Marbles teams of
Ed Horton.
the 80s. Yes.
Yeah.
Just absolute blast to watch those teams.
Yeah.
But, that's not to say that the teams now aren't fun to watch from an offensive standpoint too. So,
yeah.
But we will get into that shortly. But first, let's talk about the team that probably is surprising us more than anything with how disappointing they've been over the last week and a half or 2 weeks. Let's start out with the Iowa women. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, after today, they've gone on a 3-game losing streak, and that's an oddity for Iowa women basketball. Mm-hmm. We just started out on January the 9th with going over to Illinois. Played well early. Actually had the lead, I believe, at the half. And then their bugaboo that third quarter, it just kind of fell apart on them. And then they tried to come back in the fourth and couldn't get it done. A 62-57 loss. Iowa was led by Hannah Stolke's 18 points, 13 rebounds. Seemed like she was really the only one in double digits. Iowa shot 40% for the game from the field. They shot 25% from the 3-point line, which is
terrible
on the poor end of things.
Yeah.
They did out-rebound Illinois 37-28. But the same thing that's been getting them every time that they lose a game, it seems like it's always the same things. Turnovers and free throws. And they were very bad at both. They had 18 turnovers in Illinois, and they only shot 47% from the free throw line. Those things right there will get you beat virtually every time.
You hit your norm, you win that game by probably 5.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do that on the road. It's hard enough to win in the Big Ten on the road, but to put up 18 turnovers and shoot 47% from the line.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly what happens is you get to put one in the loss column.
Yeah, and I think at one point I remember it was Feuerbach and a Falter went up there for I think missed 6 straight free throws in the fourth quarter. I mean that's unacceptable especially from your seniors.
Seniors, yeah, yeah. We're not getting a lot out of Miss Feuerbach lately, and I don't know if she's in a funk or what, but she has not played well. She did not play well at Maryland or with Maryland. She did not play well with Indiana. She did not play well with Illinois. I don't know what the answer to her is.
She needs to sit for a little bit with somebody else. I think
so.
I mean, you've got freshmen that are outplaying her,
contributing.
You go with that, and you say, I'll sit you and let you get your head right. Look what it did for Dembele when they took him out of the starting lineup those few games. Now, I think it's going to take a couple games to get him back in line because he jumped in there with a start, and that just messes with his head, I think. But
yeah,
I think the same thing can be said for Feuerbach. I don't think she's necessarily the answer as a starter. She might be just better off coming off the bench as a sixth person or, sixth or seventh person, first, second person off the bench, whatever the case may be, and just has a chance to see the flow of the game, see how they're playing. And there's no shame in that. There's no shame in saying, hey, I'm, and stepping up and saying, hey, I'm feeling like my contributions are better if I come off the bench and I'm a spark plug and I can maybe get some defensive stops. And, I get a little bit better shot because I'm coming in with them just a little bit more winded and I've got a little bit cleaner shot. And then when I start seeing some of those fall, then my confidence is boosted. I don't know, because the last few games, just not seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you expected kind of a much better role out of her coming into the season, knowing what she was about last year, coming off the bench, and contributed last year. Not a lot, but she wasn't expected to do a lot with Caitlin in there. And I don't know if everybody's they feel like they have to take on bigger roles because of the loss of Caitlin. But it just seems like there's a lot of pressing going on. They're trying really, really hard instead of allowing the flow of the game for them to go with the flow of the game. It's just, they seem like they're just so tense. And this just there's no real rhythm to the flow of their offense. I'm not sure what's going on with them, but Jan needs to get this straightened out, and she needs to get it straightened out in a hurry. This is a couple 3 games in a row.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I have noticed just from my own observations. It's just, it feels like their mentality when they get down by 6-7 points is, I've got to start bombing threes or I'm never going to get back into it. You're only down 6 points. You're down 2-3 possessions. You don't have to have a 3 every single time you go down. And I just think they need to get away from that and say, I've got big people in the low post that I can get the ball to, and figure out ways to get the ball to them. And the other thing that I've kind of noticed is and this is something that I'm kind of surprised with the amount of seniors that they have on the team, is there's a lack of leadership there. I just don't feel like anybody wants to step up and say, hey, this is my team. And, and maybe that's just the unselfish nature of certain players, is they want to be team first, me second, which is great. But at some point you've got to stop and say, this is my team and I'm going to lead them. And I don't see anybody doing that right now. And that's what you need when you're in a 3-game losing streak and you're playing well enough to win all 3 of those games. You could have won all 3 of those games. You're just not executing down the stretch. You're taking poor shots. This game it's poor shot selection or missed layups. How many missed layups were there?
Yeah.
Just certain little things like that. In other games, it's turnovers, it's rebounding, not rebounding, sorry. Free throw shooting. That's what I meant. Things that can be easily corrected. You just need to have somebody step up and say, look, I'm going to put you on my shoulders and let's get this done. Follow my lead and do what I'm telling you to do. That's what Caitlin Clark brought to the table. Everybody followed her. They knew what they were getting. I don't know that there's anybody that has that leadership quality right now that has the ability to just put them on their shoulders and say, follow me. I'm going to take you there.
Well, I think it comes down to a different leadership style too, because I think Caitlin was more of a vocal leader
Very demonstrative.
Very, very demonstrative, very, excitable. And then I think you've got two possible candidates who could take it. And I think they're looking at each other and not, it's like a fly ball in the outfield and you got an infielder and an outfielder coming together and they both look at each other and the ball drops in the middle. I don't think either one of them's taking it. And that's Lucy Olson and Sid Falter. They're both 1-year players. That's all they have left this year. They need to, either one of them needs to step up and say, I want to be the leader. I'm going to take this team on my back and I'm going to be a vocal leader and hold everyone accountable for their actions and their play. And if you want it, go ahead. But, if one of them needs to stand up and take it.
The one person I have seen kind of step up and basically try to lead him is a freshman.
Yeah.
And Taylor Strimlow.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, she's got those qualities. And so, the future's bright there. I think she's going to be one of those that's going to be able to, it's going to have that bulldog mentality of, I'm not going to lose to this team. And she's going to rally people around her. But as a freshman, it's difficult to get that mindset of, follow me. But she definitely has the ability and she plays hard. She's got that type of, she's the type of player that you can rally around and you want to mimic because of the effort that she puts out. So, you see the leadership qualities there. I just think it's that she feels like, well, I'm just a freshman. I shouldn't be doing this. And that's where the seniors need to step up. Even it doesn't even have to be a senior. It could be a junior. It could be a Hannah Slokey. It could be Taylor McCabe. We're not going to lose this game. I don't know. Part of that could just be the coaching style too, of not necessarily putting them in a position to say, you're the vocal leader of this team. You see it clearly with the men's team. You see who the leaders are on that team. There's two of them in my book that you want to get behind and you want to follow them. And I just don't see that with the women yet. Yeah. And I think that if they could identify that, they could turn their season around. Is it going to be, like they've had the past few years? No, but at this point, they're trending towards not being in the tournament. They're trending more towards a bubble than they are to being fully in. So They need to get something figured out quick.
Yeah. I don't know. You want to move on to today's game then and talk about a little bit about Indiana?
Yeah.
Okay. We Iowa plays Indiana at home today. It was a kind of a doubleheader last night and today, the men and the women. It doesn't happen very often. Usually it's one's on the road, one's at home, and then they reverse it. But this time it's at men's and women's, not really a doubleheader, but it's, 7 o'clock. It's an
Indiana weekend.
Or 2. Yeah, it's an Indiana weekend. Okay, well, Iowa lost 74-67. Iowa was led by Taylor McCabe's 15 points. And Taylor Strimlow's 9 rebounds. Here's the bugaboo today. 34% free throw or field goal shooting. They did not shoot the ball well today. They were 32% from the 3-point line. They did win the rebound battle, 32-25. Actually, the turnovers were down as a total, but they had 9 in the first, probably 10 minutes?
7 minutes.
Yeah. But they only had 14 for the game, so they cleaned that up a little bit in the second quarter, and third quarter, and fourth quarter. They did shoot free throws well. They did shoot 83%. And it just, I think the field goal shooting today was probably the biggest thing. And just, they dug themselves a hole early and it was kind of hard for them to dig out. They did get it down to, was it 2 or 3 towards the end? And then it's like Indiana just hit the accelerator. And next thing you know, it's 10 again.
Yeah, I think they got it down to 3 and then a free throw and back-to-back threes. I had the volume muted out, so I missed out on what that whole conversation was with the when Garzone hit the 3-pointer, and then they called the foul, and then they gave Indiana the ball out of bounds. I didn't get that either. I missed what that was because I had the volume turned off. I don't know. I'm a little superstitious. It seemed like when I turned off the volume and didn't have to listen to the announcers, they started playing better. So I leave it that way, and I kind of follow my gut with that. But I didn't understand that. There was any other call that I thought was stupid, but it wasn't stupid on the officials' part. Was more the Sid Falter technical foul early in the game. argue all you want. That's just a dumb play by a fifth-year senior.
Agreed. Agreed.
However, could it have been called a delay of game warning like they do every time when a player touches the ball when it comes out of the net? Sure, but this was probably warranted a technical because the girl had the ball in her hands.
Yep.
That's a little bit different story. So, some people will argue and say, oh, well, that's a cheap technical, shouldn't have happened. By the rule of the law, it absolutely should have, and that's a dumb play.
You shouldn't be getting that kind of play out of your senior. She should know better than that. That's just, and you think of it's no harm, no foul, but by the same token, they had to shoot. They got 2 free throws out of the deal. So, there was, it was
and
dumb.
The ball out of bounds.
It was dumb. It was just not smart.
2 free throws, the ball out of bounds.
It's a good thing we didn't lose by one point.
That, I believe, if I remember right, they probably hit a 3 on that again, and that was probably a 5-point swing, and you lost by 7.
Yeah, and the girl that was shooting them had made 34 straight, and made them both
just not
easily.
A smart play,
right?
Personally, I probably would have pulled her out of the game at that point and just said, you're going to sit for a little bit.
I said the same thing,
but I don't coach them.
Yeah.
So.
I did not look to see who they play next.
I have no idea.
I don't know either. I could look that up while you take this if you want.
Yeah, I'm sure it's obviously it's going to be a road game because they played 2 home. Well, no, they didn't play 2 home games in a row, did they? They were at Illinois.
They play on Thursday, January 16th, a home game with Nebraska.
Okay.
Then on Sunday, a week from today, they play at Oregon. It's a 4 p.m. So next Thursday at 6 and next Sunday at 4.
You got to win one of the 2 of them. You got to win. You need to win them both, but you've got to win at least one of the 2.
You should try to hold serve at home as much as you can.
Yeah.
But Nebraska's not going to be easy. They're going to be a lot like Indiana. They're going to be scrappy, and they're going to have some pretty good players. So.
Yep. Not an envious position to be in. Not a position that they've been in for quite a while either. So. But I think somebody did make a comment about wasn't that long ago that they were 7-4 and they made a pretty decent run after that. So I mean, it's possible they could get it cleaned up. I mean, the mistakes they're making are correctable mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
But they've been correctable for a long time. The turnovers have been correctable for a while, and they haven't gotten corrected.
I mean, but like I'm saying, it's not from a lack of talent, and it's not from being out athleticized, so to speak. You've got, and I hate to use this word when it comes to anybody in basketball, but you got the horses to compete with anybody. You just need to rein them in and get them right.
I think as much as anything comes down to experience. I mean, your most experienced player is Lucy Olson, and she didn't even play at Iowa until this year.
Yeah, Hannah's got quite a bit of experience.
Yeah, Hannah, but Sita Falter, I mean, did she play not till Molly got hurt last year, Molly Davis, and then she started a lot of games and played well. But for the 3 years prior to that, she didn't, or 2 years prior to that, she didn't play much.
Yeah.
So
Andy O'Grady's the same way.
Yeah. You're playing against teams like Maryland with Cheyenne Sellers and the other girl that's been there for 8, 9, 10 years, seemingly.
Yeah.
They've been on the court and they've played a lot more games than I was.
Same with Indiana with that Chloe Moore McNeil and Garzone. They've been playing together for 3 or 4 years now.
And that 33, I think, has been there for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I can't remember her name.
She killed.
Their biggest loss was Mackenzie Holmes last year.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, they had a pretty good core coming back. So
right.
You're right there with them, and that's the good news. And the good news being is the things that are costing you games are correctable mistakes. You just got to correct them. You can't continue to make them. So,
what do you say we go from the 0-2 team to the 2-0 team for the week?
The surprising 2-0 team.
The surprising 2-0 team.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's transition over to the men's side. They had an early week game against Nebraska. I'll let you go ahead and handle that.
Okay, so they had Nebraska earlier in the week. Was a 97-87 win in overtime. Iowa was down at one point with 15 minutes to go by 15 points. It was 52-37 at that point. I rewatched it. Iowa was led by Josh Dix's 31 points and 6 rebounds. Also, not to be outdone, Peyton Sanford had 30 points and 6 rebounds. Iowa shot 48% field goals, 49% from the three-point line, and 88% from the free throw line. They were unfortunately out-rebounded 39-33. They did turn the ball over 13 times. But they fought hard. And it was like Peyton Sanford, I think, did he even score in the first half, or did he have like 2 points?
No, he had
2
all
free
30
throws
points in the second half.
Yeah, and came back, got 30. So, that's what they needed. They absolutely needed that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a couple of things that I thought were a little bit kind of weird. I'm going to mention 2 right off the bat. The double dribble that wasn't called on Price. Kind of happy about that. It was 74-73, I believe, at the time.
Yeah.
That would have given Nebraska the ball back with
25 seconds, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they might have had the shot clock been off. So they might have rolled with that last shot. As it was, they didn't call it. He fouled him. He made 2 free throws, made it 76-73 in regulation. And then the next one that was weird was that I think Iowa had planned 100% on fouling the player. And Brock Harding took a swipe at him as he ran by him, thinking that was enough to get a foul. They didn't call it. He ran down 3-point line, hit the 3-pointer, sent it to overtime. If you're going to foul in that position, outside of making it a flagrant, make sure that they have no choice but to call the foul. I mean, that just swiping at it is not enough. Unless you go up to that referee and right before that play and say, we are 100% going to foul this guy, and we're going to do it on purpose, but we're not going to do it flagrantly. And then they'll be more apt to say, yep, that's a foul. Send the kid to the line for 2, and we'd be done. As it was, they left it to chance. They got burned. But fortunately, they got it in overtime.
I think the kid traveled on his approach to the line too, but
he might have.
So if you're gonna say, well, the double dribble cost Nebraska, well, Nebraska got a gift by allowing him travel. Some people say, well, no, that's his gather step. I watched it 3 times. I've slowed it down. He took 4 steps.
Yeah,
a gather step is the first step. You have 2 after that, and you put the shot up. That kid had 4. So, but it's one of those that you'd have to slow it down and watch it in slow mo to see all 4 steps. So the game happens really fast. Obviously officials miss calls. We complain about it all the time about missed calls, or call fouls on things that aren't fouls. The anticipation foul of, well, typically in a situation like that, if you go up, you're going to foul a guy. So even if it's clean as clean can be, like, obviously I thought that Owen Freeman's last foul was as clean could be.
Yeah.
So,
I think if they would have looked at that again, not that they can do that with fouls, but if they were to look at it with a clear conscience, they probably would have said, no, that's a play on, not a foul. Yeah. But
and I'm sure they do when they are evaluated, they'll see things that'll be like, yeah, okay, that's we messed that one up.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I
don't know what the accountability that officials have when it comes to evaluations and whatnot, but
I'm sure they're graded.
I'm sure they are. But clearly some of them are graded on a curve because they keep coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
but anyway,
it might be a situation too where you just don't have enough referees out there with all the colleges, and
even the bad ones are better than some of the others. So who knows?
Yeah. So with that comeback and winning by 10 in overtime, does that motivate you, or does that give you the momentum to play a second home game in 3 days. What does that do for you? Well, I think we found out last night, didn't we?
I think it clearly was a good thing.
Clearly. I think their confidence right now is at an all-time high for the season. And this game last night, this Indiana game where they won handily 85-60, might have been the best game they played 2 years.
Probably.
I can't think of one they played better last year than they played last night.
Yeah.
Can you?
I'm
drawing a blank. I can't think of any that they completely obliterated the team and had it well in hand early in the second half.
Maybe Nebraska.
Yeah, maybe.
At home, they beat them by, 20 last year, and then we just basically had it in hand.
This was a 30-point game at one point towards the end.
Yeah.
So, 30 points against Indiana, beating Indiana like that, that doesn't come around too often. And you need to relish in when it does. Because Indiana usually has Iowa's number. Lately they haven't, but
I think as long as Mike Woodson's the coach at Indiana, Iowa's always going to have a chance because that guy is a flat-out terrible coach.
Yeah, I don't know how he continues to.
I hope they keep him around forever.
Yeah. And I think they said this is the only time that we're going to play Indiana this year. It was a one-time deal. So unless we play them in the tournament.
I think our doubles are Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, maybe?
So that might be right, but it just seems like, have we played every team? And we need to get Rutgers in here next because I think that we played every team that has red on their uniform except maybe Ohio State.
Well, USC.
Well, we're playing them next.
Week.
Or is it UCLA or USC first?
I think it's USC first.
USC on the 14th and UCLA on the 17th.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go back to last night's game. I was led by Peyton Sanford's 23 points. Owen Freeman had a double-double with 16 points, 12 rebounds. And Brock Harding, I want to make sure you mention this, he had 10 points and 10 assists for also a double-double. Iowa shot 54% field goals for the game, 46% behind the line, and 56% free throw shooting, which was poor, but they really didn't need it. But by the same token, let's be consistent and shoot in the 80s. They actually out-rebounded a Big Ten team. I don't know if that's happened in the last 2 years. 36-30. But they only had 12 turnovers, which for an entire game isn't too bad, especially when you play that far ahead and you're playing some players that are a little further down the line on the bench with more minutes. So you can expect more turnovers. And I thought 12 wasn't bad.
Well, and one of the turnovers was a gimme shot clock violation at the end of the game, too. So
yeah. So overall, I'd say best game of the season Iowa's played all year for sure. And that's just going to give you momentum. Now you got to travel out and you got to go all the way out west and you play 2 games. I don't know. I would assume that they will stay there and not fly back and then fly back again to the 17th. I would assume they'll stay there. And I don't know if the wildfires are going to be any kind of a hindrance to that. But the way I understand it, UCLA would be the only one that might be questionable. Yeah, but USC, they said, is for sure okay for Tuesday, I believe. Isn't it Tuesday they play, the 14th? Today is the 11th, 12th. Right? Today's the 12th? Okay. Yeah, Tuesday. So Tuesday, Friday, right?
Yep.
Okay. So that's what they're playing. They're playing USC on Tuesday and UCLA on Friday out there, both games. And then I imagine they will return. I haven't looked that far ahead, but those are the games for the week. Any thoughts on those or any thoughts about last night's game?
I'm a little more concerned about the USC game now after what USC did to Illinois.
Yeah.
UCLA, on the other hand, I'm concerned about them just simply because they have been terrible lately. It's always that concern. It's that mentality of being an Iowa fan of somebody's coming off of a horrible week or somebody's coming off of 0 for 45 shooting slump and they'll go 5 for 5 in the first 5 minutes. And it's like Iowa's the get right team for them. And I just hope that that's not the case when it comes to UCLA, because I think UCLA is a very winnable game just based on the simple fact that I don't think they're playing very well right now. And I don't know that they're as good as people thought they were supposed to be. I think they've lost 3 in a row now, haven't they?
They were rated
Yeah.
up in the, I must say they were in the lower
Mid-teens,
teens, maybe 13,
15th,
14.
17th,
Yeah, maybe.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've not been that impressed with them lately. Again, I hope it's not a situation where here comes Iowa. It's a get-right game for them, and everything goes right for them, kind of like Wisconsin. I'm hoping that's not the case. Same with USC, and maybe with USC, I'm hoping they're a little overconfident after beating Illinois. They're like, oh, well, Illinois is twice the team Iowa is. We don't have to play as hard, and Iowa goes in and just shows them. It's a very, very winnable 2-0 week for them, but it could also be a very dramatic 0-2 week for them.
Well, we both know it, and I think everybody that listens to us knows it. It is extremely difficult to win road games in the Big Ten. End of the period.
Almost feel like these two are ones you have to get, though.
Yeah. I mean, nothing's guaranteed. I mean, I wouldn't expect Iowa to lose to Minnesota on the road, but I could also see it happening. So, it's one of those situations where if you don't have your A game, if you don't go out and put 100% effort into it, you lose to anyone at any place on any night.
Yeah. I think so. The Big Ten's got a lot of teams that are very hot and cold. One night they can look like top 5 team in the country, and the next night they look like they're 336 team in the country. And I look specifically at teams like Ohio State, who are either really, really good or they're really, really bad. There's really not a whole lot in between with them, and you just hope that you can catch them when they're not on a really good night.
Did you see what Purdue did to Nebraska?
Yeah, that was
a 36-point win.
68.
Bad.
Something like that.
36 points. So
yeah, that's that's a Nebraska team that's known for being a defensive team. But
they gave up 97 to Iowa, and then what'd you say? It was
104.
104 to Purdue in back-to-back games.
Yeah, but Purdue also hit 19 3-pointers.
I just saw the score.
I think that's what I read this afternoon was I think they hit 19 3-pointers in that game against them. Yeah, crazy. It just shows you that, and that's another team that's kind of hot and cold sometimes is Purdue. They're a good team, don't get me wrong, and they're going to be a tournament team, but there are games where they look absolutely invincible, and other teams where they look like they just rolled in off the playground, didn't know what they were doing. So,
yeah, you gotta kind of, you're excited about Iowa winning 2 good games, but they did both of those games at home. And, so you should temper your excitement a little bit. Let's see how they do this week out on the road out west. And they come back, we'll see what they do then. It's a longer season. You just gotta kind of temper that excitement a little bit, because there's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be good games, and there's going to be games like the Wisconsin game where they just didn't seem like they were interested in playing. So you have to kind of take the good with the bad, and you have to understand right now that you want them to win, of course, every game, because they need to win as many as they can to get in the tournament. But I think right now with a couple of games that they've won this week, that has really increased their resume for a possible, they're not on the bubble anymore. I think
they're 39 in the net ranking now.
I think that they've put themselves securely in the field at this point. Now, like I said, there's a ton of the season left. But, earlier in the year, I would have thought, no, I don't think there's really much of a chance. I think they're bubble at best. But I think right now they're either one of the last 4 in or one of the first 4 in.
That's still being a bubble team, but still,
it's still a bubble team. But
they're more firmly on the bubble.
Yeah, they're squarely on the bubble. There's no teetering on the bubble. They're there, and I think that if they continue to hold serve and improve and play like they played last night, they're in. I think if they played like they played last night, they are in.
I think if you looked at it objectively, and you take the Hawkeye colored glasses off, and you take the non-glasses off as well, and look at it objectively, and you say, okay, they've won a lot of quad 3 and 4 games. They're beating up on the teams that they should be beating up, but they're beating them up bad. It's not like they're just, they're beating them by 10, 12. They're beating them by 30. It's kind of like the Indiana case for football. they're playing the teams that are on their schedule. They're beating the crap out of the teams that they're supposed to be beating the crap out of. Then you look at their losses. Outside of one bad loss to Wisconsin, which isn't a bad loss in the sense of who you lost to, it's how you lost.
Yeah.
You look at, a 9-point game against Iowa State, who will probably be the number 2 team in the country this week.
Yeah.
You have a 2-point road loss to a Michigan team that's at the top of the Big Ten standings right now, on the road. And you have a, 6-point loss to
Utah
7-point
State.
loss to Utah State, who is a top 15 team now. If you look at that from an objective standpoint, they don't have any bad losses as far as the teams they played.
Right.
Now, yes, that Wisconsin game, 30-some points, is a bad loss based on the result. Based on who you lost to, it's not. And if you just throw out the fact, it's like, I think a lot of times they look at it and say anything over, 12, 14 points, we just throw out the differential. It's a loss. It's whatever. So there's not a bad loss in their resume, and they do have a couple of good quality wins now. So if you're talking about them being a strictly bubble team, I think that's underselling them a little bit based on that. But, they need to prove it by beating some more of these quad 1 teams and getting more of these quad 1 wins. Teams like Utah need to continue to win. Utah State needs to continue to win. Iowa State, as much as I hate to say it, needs to continue to win, which I think they will, because they're kind of like, I don't want to say they're like the Notre Dame teams or the old Minnesota Vikings teams that they had the luck of the Irish or the Minnesota luck. Because watching that game yesterday, they were pretty lucky to get out of that game with a win.
Very lucky.
Give up Texas Tech gives up the tying basket as time expires to go into overtime. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and sometimes it's better to be lucky and good, and that's where they're at. So, they're going to continue to win. I don't see Michigan really falling off unless something happens. I think they're a very good, very well-coached team. They got a good roster build. So as long as those teams continue to produce and win, your resume looks better, even if you've lost to those teams. Now, this being college football, we wouldn't be saying that because quality losses don't really amount to much because you got a lot less games in there. But when you're talking basketball with more teams, more games, and more spots, those quality losses do come into play more. And so I think they're in a good position. They just need to continue to do what they're doing. They need to pick off these teams on the road that they have equal footing with. And I feel like USC and UCLA are kind of those types of teams. Washington definitely is a team that they need to beat. I think that's a home game, though. They do have Oregon at home, which is a good thing. So I think that some of their tougher games are at Carver left. So I think you're probably going to have to go to Michigan State, probably have to go to Purdue. I don't want to say there's no chance you're going to win those games, but this year you're not going to win those games.
Yeah, good chance you're not.
So you got to win the ones that you can, and you got to hold serve at home, like you said. And their only loss at home has been that 9-point loss to Iowa State. So continue to hold serve at home and try to pick a few of these away games. The at Minnesotas or the at UCLA, at USC. I don't even know who else they'd have on the road at this point.
Play at Rutgers, maybe.
Maybe they play at Maryland. Maybe they always seem to play well at Maryland anyway. So I'm kind of okay with them playing there this year, if that's the case. I haven't looked ahead of the schedule to see where their home and away games are.
Yeah, I don't.
But
I should probably get a copy of it and post it right here in front of me so I can see it, but I don't.
But yeah, you just got to continue doing what you're doing. It was a great week. I think I said it earlier or on last week's podcast. I said, you got to go 2-0 this week, and they did.
Yeah.
And so good for them. And, obviously doing it in dramatic fashion against Nebraska, and then in dominant fashion against Indiana, who was, top 5 in the league.
They were hot coming in.
Had they been playing the cream of the crop of the conference? No, not necessarily, but they're playing who's on the schedule and they're beating them. That's what matters.
Yeah.
So just keep doing what you're doing.
We're going to transition now to football, and I'm going to hijack this for just a second because I know where you want to go next. I want your thoughts on the championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And then we'll go to Iowa's quarterback position room, and we'll talk about that in detail. But go ahead with
my thoughts on the championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame. First of all, I don't even know where the championship game's being played at this year. Is it I don't know
it's
where
Monday.
it's at. Yeah, I don't even know where the venue is. Which I don't think really matters as much. You got two Midwest teams that are going south, I'm sure, or west. So I don't think that really matters. It's probably in Arizona at the Fiesta Bowl or something. Anyway, it doesn't really matter there. So the travel aspect isn't going to affect either one of them, or it's going to affect both the same. I think Ohio State has a distinct advantage based on overall talent and how they've been playing, and they've probably played a tougher road to get to where they're at. That's not to take away the fact that Notre Dame has, Notre Dame didn't have a cupcake schedule to get to where they're at either.
No.
But I think Ohio State in the long run had the tougher draw to get to the championship. And I think they're coming into it probably healthier. And they're just playing on a level that is above where they've been playing the last 2 years. Now, I hate to say it because I just don't like Notre Dame. We were brought up to be Notre Dame haters, but I do like their coach. I can't not like the guy. And he's an Ohio State grad. So, there's that aspect of it. He's going to want to have that extra motivation to beat his old former team.
Do you want to give us a prediction?
I would say right now, my guess is probably 27-13 Ohio State.
Yeah, I got to go Ohio State also. I just think they're too good. They're playing as well as they've played all season right now. And when you've got Smith on the outside and Jigbu and all the guys that they can throw the ball to, it's just amazing how many guys they've got just can light it up. I think it's just a talent level difference. I've got, I think Notre Dame plays a pretty good defense, so I'm gonna keep it a little lower than what I thought originally. I'm gonna go with 26-19.
Okay. I outside of a stupid play by Penn State, I think Penn State outplayed Notre Dame most of that game. Now, granted, that does not include the fact that I don't think Penn State completed a single pass to a wide receiver. So they took the Iowa playbook and said, let's try to run with that. But they did have a lot of touches for the tight end.
Stupid penalties too. Penn State had some stupid penalties.
They did have some stupid penalties, and that cost them.
Avoidable penalties, things that just didn't need to happen.
I also look back at that very last play on that game-winning field goal. Why did he have two safeties back 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage on that? Was he expecting them to fake it? It's a tied game. I mean, come on. You put all 11 guys right there on the line, and you try to block that because that's your only hope. He's not going to fake that thing in a tie ball game when he can kick a field goal to basically win it. He's not going to fake it.
Right.
Give me a break. Come on.
I mean, and if he missed the field goal, then you're sitting at overtime.
Yeah. So he really was playing with house money at that point. You got to bring the house on it. So I thought that was very interesting final play call for Penn State, I guess.
Well, I don't know. I just thought Penn State kind of blew it when they had ran that, when they got the ball back after the tie game. They ran the ball on the first play for, I'm going to say like 14 yards. And then they decided to get cutesy and decided to throw the ball around. Well, first of all, if you're going to do that, throw it like in a screen situation or behind the, to the side. You go downfield late, man, that's just a recipe for disaster. And it happened. They got intercepted, and it didn't take much for Notre Dame was already kind of was getting close to field goal position. They did run a couple plays and got down there, and timeout after timeout after timeout, 20 minutes later, they finally did kick the field goal and won it. And but I thought Penn State actually kind of blew that one on their own.
Yeah, I think they outplayed them, but Notre Dame won the game because of mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think people will go talking about how stupid of a play that was, but yet want to dog on Kirk Ferentz for running the ball and running the clock out and playing for overtime in situations like that. Oh, he's just not going to, he doesn't want to take the risk. Well, now you see what happens sometimes when you take that risk. So,
Well,
I don't question those decisions because I'm not being paid to make those decisions. You're right. I think running the ball was the smarter play. The worst case scenario, you go to overtime. Your best case scenario is you pop off a few, you've got timeouts, you get it in a field goal range, you kick a field goal, and you win it yourself.
mm-hmm.
But,
well, the world dodged a bullet. They don't have to watch two Big Ten teams play for a national championship. So SEC.
The world didn't. The SEC dodged a bullet.
Okay, well, yeah.
And
The
ESPN
SEC
dodged
world.
a bullet.
Yeah. But anyway.
I do want to say one real quick thing. I do want to say it's amazing how quiet the SEC fans are anymore, though. Over the last couple of weeks, since their golden teams got the crap beat out of them or knocked out or whatever, they've been quiet.
Well, I saw the Big Ten had a 5-1 record against the SEC this year in bowl games.
Yeah, well, let's don't talk about that. That one loss is us.
Well, I know, but
I've also seen
shows
Herb
dominance.
Street taking a complete 180 on his.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not an SEC homer. I'm a Big Ten homer now. Yeah, shut up. Get out of my face.
Yeah.
I've lost every ounce of respect for Kirk Herbstreit that I ever had, and that wasn't a whole lot going into this year anymore. So
yeah, I'm sorry about his dog, but that's about as far as it goes.
Anyway, let's roll this back and let's talk a little bit about the Iowa quarterback room. Had a chance this week to kind of sit down and evaluate all the quarterbacks that are beyond the roster this year. Assumedly be on the roster this year. And I will say, I will preface this another way here in a little bit about, I think a situation Gronowski that is actually probably going to be a good thing for Iowa. But I'm going to start out with Mark Gronowski. I know some people are thinking that Iowa got fleeced by the fact that he's going to have a surgery coming up to clean up some things. Based on what little information I know, when I've heard, it's basically cleaning out a knee. If that's correct, then I'll tell you this: he'll be back before you know it. And I've had that done twice, and I'm not an athlete and way older than him, and I bounced back within a month. So, yeah, it may cost him spring, but it doesn't mean he's. You have a surgery on your knee doesn't mean your brain stops working. Doesn't mean you stop being able to read the playbook, stop being able to play catch or throw the ball or run through the plays, do walkthroughs to understand how the motions go. The only thing that's going to affect is your timing and your live reps in spring practice. And I would be more concerned if we were talking about a guy who was not necessarily a 4-year starter, maybe a guy that's only been a 1-year starter. And I would certainly be a lot more concerned if he wasn't a 2-time national champion and a Walter Payton winner. I don't feel like this is a big setback for him, and I think it is an advantage for Iowa in this sense that he will not be healthy and cleared for full contact until summer workouts. At that point in time, the transfer windows are shut. I think you keep Brendan Sullivan around as the number 2, unless he fully gets beat out in spring practice by Hank Brown or something. I think that keeps Sullivan here, whereas I think before, Gronowski would beat him out. Close competition between Hank Brown and Brendan Sullivan. Sullivan might transfer for his final year somewhere else. And I think you can use Gronowski and Sullivan in a way similar to what you did with McNamara and Sullivan this year. Yes, Gronowski is more of a mobile quarterback, but you don't want to risk your number 1 quarterback getting injured on a silly play where you're running the ball too much, and maybe you can bring in your backup who has just as good of a running ability, maybe even better running ability in a red zone situation, but still can pass the ball. So they have to respect that. And, I'm not saying that I do it to put Sullivan in harm's way, but I do it because I feel more confident in his ability to run the ball in those situations and have that little bit less of an opportunity, because I don't want to get Gronowski hurt in a situation like that where I can't use him between the 20s. It's kind of how I look at it. So I think to me, that's kind of a plus for Iowa that this happened right now and he's going to miss spring. It's a minus for the fact that he doesn't get the live reps. But again, I would be a lot more concerned if this was a quarterback that didn't have the experience that he's got. So that's my spiel on Gronowski versus Sullivan going forward. I think there's obviously a upgrade from a passing standpoint, from a proven passing standpoint. They both completion percentages are right around the same, mid 60s. But you've got a lot more proof in the pudding when it comes to Mark Gronowski. And, whether that be against FCS level competition, we've seen a lot of FCS players come up to the Division I level that are very, very talented and very capable of playing at this level. It's, I think the old adage is the FCS is not a whole lot different than the FBS other than the depth. You're 11 on 11. If you've got a really good FCS team like South Dakota State is, or like North Dakota State is, their top 11 matches up with a lot of teams' top 11. It's the next 11 that you have the drop off. So he's been doing it against quality competition. And so I would be, like I said, I'd be more concerned if that wasn't the case. Now, as we drop down to Hank Brown, I think it's a good situation for him. From every indication I've seen, at 6'4", 210, he's got a good strong arm. The video that I've seen, the kid can sling the ball. Career percentage, 64% at Auburn. Granted, that's a small sample size, but high school wise, senior year, he threw for almost 3,300 yards and 47 touchdowns. So clearly has arm talent and clearly knows what he's doing. And I've seen, the passes that he's made, and we're talking, 40, 50-yard passes, they seem pretty effortless to him. So I would say going forward, he is in a good position. I'm right now on a Hank Brown bandwagon of, I think he's going to be a good pickup for Iowa. I think he's going to be eventually the starter when the dust clears next year. Not this next year, but the following year after the Gronowski-Sullivan year. I think he's going to be the starter, and I think Jimmy Sullivan's going to be his backup, and it's going to be a close race. I look at both those two guys. I give the advantage to Brown just simply for the fact that he has the experience playing in the SEC a couple of games. He has seen live defenses at this level and the speed of them. I think it's just going to help him in the long run, and I think Tim Lester's going to get the best out of him that he can get. Now, that's not taking anything away from Jimmy Sullivan either, because I think he's got talent as well. They're very similar style of quarterback. I think they got very similar attributes, very similar skill sets. But I would say at this point, Brown's experience is the determining factor between who I think would be the clear number 3. Now,
you don't forget about Jackson Stratton in that mix.
I'm getting to Jackson Stratton.
Okay.
I'm getting to the walk-on guys.
Okay.
Jackson Stratton and Ryan Fitzgerald. Stratton, again, strong arm, good leadership ability. I'm going to refer to my notes that I took on him simply because I don't remember all of his stats, but he throws about 71% at Iowa. That's his career completion percentage at Iowa, which, yeah, again, a small sample size. His best game was, 71% for 76 yards in a 29-13 win against Maryland. He did lead them to a tying touchdown against UCLA. We saw when he played Nebraska, it was a lot tougher sledding. And I think it was just a simple fact that they dumbed down the game plan and just kind of, Iowa didn't really have the ball a lot in that game either. So it was a little more difficult to gauge that, but I think, he does have he has the arm talent. He has a little bit of experience, but I just think from talent wise, I just feel like Hank Brown and Jimmy Sullivan have a little bit more talent, natural talent. Again, not taking anything away from Jackson Stratton because, hey, he's 2-0 as a starter at Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
But what's Deacon Hill was what? 7-2 at Iowa?
Yeah.
So take that for what it's worth. And then we drop to Ryan Fitzgerald. Again, another very, very intriguing kid. Very impressed with the stats that I've seen on him and what little film I've seen of him. He's a dual threat guy. He threw for almost 2,600 or 2,700 yards as a senior, 25 touchdowns, ran for 350 yards and a touchdown. He's got the skill set. He's got the pedigree with his dad being, having that NCAA coaching experience. So he's seen college football different than most of the rest of us have. He's seen it from the sidelines. He's seen it from a dad's perspective. He's seen it from a coach's perspective. And I'm sure, Fitzgerald has had plenty of tape on Iowa over the years that he could show his son, hey, look, this is what you're dealing with. So I'm not counting him out as somebody who could make a play for some time. I don't know at this point. It's unknown. He's an unknown quantity or a commodity, just simply because all we have is his high school stuff. I'd like to see what he can do. He's going to be there for the spring, so we'll see what happens there. It's going to be one of those times where in the spring, you're really basically only going to be missing Gronowski. You're going to have 5 guys in that quarterback room that are getting reps, and that's going to be Brendan Sullivan, Hank Brown, Jimmy Sullivan, probably getting the bulk of the 1s and 2s, with Stratton and Fitzgerald being getting the backups of that. So, and I'm sure they're all going to get some shots with the 2s and the 1s, and everybody does in spring practice because you want to see what you've got, and it's a chance for them to stand out. But I think in the long run, after next year, it's going to be Hank Brown against Jimmy Sullivan as to who the starter is going to be.
Well, this is definitely Tim Lester's room. Yes. Everybody on this list is a Lester recruit, except Jimmy Sullivan actually committed to Iowa before Tim Lester was hired. But everybody else is Tim Lester brought those people in, brought those guys in. So we'll see if, and I'm thinking more of Hank Brown and a Jimmy Sullivan and a Ryan Fitzgerald S02E20. I'm looking to see how well he polishes these quarterbacks into Big Ten caliber quarterbacks. That's what I feel like is Tim Lester's job at this point as being a quarterback coach. Now, I know he's offensive coordinator as well, but if he's going to accept the role as quarterbacks coach, he needs to take these kids under his wing and get them polished and get them ready to go and make them actually into quality Big Ten quarterbacks. That's kind of where, there's no more excuses that this was Brian's guy and Brian screwed him up. These are all your guys now, with the exception of, I guess, Jimmy Sullivan was recruited and accepted the offer before Tim was hired, but I think he's okay with him. So, he hasn't even set foot on campus, so you can mold him how you want.
No, he has. He was
practicing. Well, he actually is on campus,
the both practices,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm mistaken there, but yeah, he did. He has been on campus. So
I think you're not going to see 6 guys come fall. Somebody's going to transfer, and I have a feeling it's going to be Stratton.
It might be. Yeah, it's going to be difficult with the 105. You're going to have to make some cuts in places, and I don't think you're going to carry 6 quarterbacks. I don't think there's any reason to carry 6 quarterbacks.
No.
You're either going to have to. I'm not sure how you're going to do that. That's yet to be determined.
Well, and you could also take a guy like Brendan Sullivan, who was a wide receiver at one point at Northwestern his freshman year. You could move him out, but you could also run some chicanery with him. You could do a pass out there like you're going to do a wide receiver screen, and he could pull up and throw the ball down the field too.
Yeah, that's not Kirk style.
Whether it's Kirk style or not, you still have the option, and it gives you more flexibility as an offense. So, I just spitballing with things that you could do.
Real quick, I do want to get your thoughts on the Chattanooga wide receiver we picked up late this week, Sam Phillips. Yeah, do you have anything on him?
Speedy kid.
He's 5'9", 185. That's what I've got on him.
Yeah, ran a 10.7 100, which is pretty quick. It's getting pretty close to the Tim DeWhite range. 78 targets last year, didn't have a single drop. Now, granted, that's not saying that he caught 78 passes.
Right.
He was targeted, doesn't mean they threw it where he could catch it. But he did not have a drop. So I think 52 or 53 catches, maybe. So
that would be a
very
lifetime
good hands,
in Iowa.
very good speed. Is the kind of guy that I think can take the top off the defense. It would be a very good complement to like a Jacob Gill, who is, an intermediate route runner. This guy could be more of your deep route runner, and then you've still got Seth Anderson, if he can stay healthy, who is also more of a deeper threat. And then Reese Vandersee, if he gets, he's more. Kind of look at Reese Vandersee, and I don't want to stereotype him based on his skin color, but he kind of reminds me of like a Matt Vandenberg style.
Ed Hinkle,
very good quality possession receiver. Hinkle had a little bit more speed than you really thought he had.
Well, I think Vandersee's got some sneaky
wheels.
Speed.
Yeah, I'm not saying that these guys are slow by any means, but I think if you look at them from role type, that's the kind of role that I see them in.
That's probably how
Vandenberg
Iowa will use them. Yeah.
It was Matt Vandenberg. Did I say James Vandenberg?
No, you said Matt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I foresee that being the style of receiver that, and that's kind of like Jacob Bill is kind of the same style as well. Fairly sure-handed, more the intermediate routes. Going to make some pretty tough catches. Granted, the easiest catch of his career he dropped in that bowl game, which I'm not faulting him for that. I think he played a heck of a season. I'm not going to jump on the kid for one drop. I mean, how many times have we seen guys like Marv McNutt drop a ball, or some of the best wide receivers we've had drop balls on catches or on balls that they should have caught, and they'll tell you they should have caught it. Yeah,
he's caught a lot more than he's dropped, so we're good there.
So anyway, I think the future is bright in the quarterback room. I think the talent is there, and I think honestly Iowa could be sneaky good next year if they can get their defense shored up on the back end. They need to get somebody in. Either need to get somebody in with some experience on the back end, or they need to hope that these freshmen and redshirt freshmen that they had are really, really good. Because that was the bugaboo. And I think some things, moving parts will help too, because I think moving Wampa over to free safety instead of the strong safety side will help him out. Putting him in Quinn Schulte's spot will help him. And then you can put Cohen Entringer back in there in that free safety spot or strong safety spot, whatever it was. And that will shore up that back end a little bit more. And then you just need to make sure that your corners are good corners. Make sure that they're able to cover in your scheme. So
you got to keep the guys healthy too.
Yeah. And linebacker needs to be, I think we got good linebackers. They just need some experience at this point. So, and guys need to stay healthy. So.
But as we both have pointed out before, that the schedule next year is dramatically more difficult than it was this year. So, take that for a grain of salt. Iowa could be a much better team, but it may not reflect that on their record because of
Iowa could be a much better team that ends 7-5.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's a distinct possibility that we could, take dramatic steps forward and still be.
Or 7-5. They could pull an Indiana and be way better than you thought they were. You just don't know. It's you. Sometimes it's how you face these teams, where you face them, and what their injury situation's like at the time compared to yours. You got to play them out as they happen. So
yeah.
Anyway, with that said, let's go ahead and wrap things up. That's all I had on the football side of things for this week.
We do have a question of the week. I do want to make sure that we get that out. We're going to go to the Iowa women for this question. Iowa women have now lost 3 consecutive games. And the question is when was the last time the Iowa women's basketball team lost 3 consecutive games in a season? That's the question. When was the last time?
Okay.
You'll have to do a little digging for this one. But I did, and I have the answer, and I'll give it to you next week.
Okay. I know the answer now too, just because I guessed it earlier and was wrong.
I told you.
But anyway, so yeah, let's wrap up. We'll hit that like and subscribe button. Help us out. I did make an executive decision. I haven't even talked to you about it, but our merchandise store, anything that we get profit-wise from merchandise, I would like to use to donate back to the Swarm.
Yeah.
I don't think we don't need to upgrade equipment or anything anytime soon. I'd like to at least have that money go back into helping get quality players in here, making our job a little bit easier, give us something more, a little bit more fun to talk about sometimes. So anything that you purchase from our merchandise store, any profits that we make off of that, which isn't a bunch, believe me, we're just barely pricing things over what cost is. But any profits that we would have are going to be donated to Swarm. So everything that you buy from us will help the University of Iowa at some point. With that said, make sure you catch us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter for now, as long as it's still there, or not Twitter, TikTok, as long as it's still there. Twitter, of course, Blue Sky. If Twitter or TikTok goes away, we'll find some other medium to put it on. But yeah, anything that basically any medium you can think of, we're on. So
all right, well, we'll wrap up with a rousing Go Hawks.
Yeah, absolutely. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.